I all hope everyone is keeping safe and healthy and keeping their physical distance from one another and your loved ones and neighbors and so on. I wanted to talk, I'm going to take things completely off the pandemic thought process, and I wanted to discuss something that's come up many times over the years that we've worked extensively to help in the planning process with our clients and prospective clients to be most efficient with how to think about getting things done. We call this a Scope Assessment Worksheet, and it is a pre-planning process where we take the idea of a one-phrase thing that says, I would like this thing, to the process of, well, what is this thing going to require for planning our budget and planning our scope? The gap goes like this. If someone were to come to you and say, I want a car, nothing else, everyone will have a different idea as to what that car looks like. It could be a brand, it could be a style, it could be a truck versus a car, it could be a van versus a truck versus a car, and it can be a super fancy van versus a truck versus a car. In other words, that price and that budget and the kind of car that you would be offering based on that simple idea, I would like a car, it could be $5,000 and it could easily be $105,000. And there are a lot of people who are watching this are going to say, and it could be more than $105,000, and it's all true. By saying I would like a car, we have no idea what you're going to use it for. We have no idea what your business or personal value proposition is. Are you going to carry your family around with it, or are you going to deliver groceries in it? Or are you going to deliver large shipments cross-country with it? There are all sorts of use cases. So the purpose of scope assessment is to bridge the gap to say, take the idea of the car, or of course in this case, the digital platform or the extension to my digital ecosystem, my brand new application, and give it a thought process where we know what is your objective, what is the business case, and therefore what should we be planning based on. This is not just for the developers world. This is also for the prospective business. Leading everyone through this process gets everyone in alignment as to why are we doing this, and what is the objective to get out of it. After this point, the goal is to say, now we know what we're planning on. I'm going to dive into it here a little bit. And so one of the first things that we need to do, is we need to discuss with the business, well, what is the value of the business? Sometimes the value of the business is, well, we're going to make lots of money off of this. We're going to go and promote it. We're going to sell it to tens of thousands of people or millions of people. And therefore, we are going to make money this way. In other cases, it's based on efficiency. We would be able to sell more stuff if we had a system or a platform that did this better than it currently works. In other cases, it has to do with expanding operations globally, where we could expand and unify our systems. We could attract better stakeholders, again, if we had platforms that could do this. Another area has to do with workflow. How do we get things done? And that can go anywhere from supply chain operations to stakeholder integrations and interactions with the platform. It can have to do with approvals, delegations, roles and privacies. Essentially, it's the full gamut. How do you get things done? And in doing so, how efficiently and how streamlined can this process be? Accounting for accountability, sign off, some access versus hidden access, these kinds of things. The third key area has to do with opportunity and pain points. So for existing businesses, this is usually about some kind of pain point. We cannot do something because we don't have this capability. or we can't do it nearly well enough because this particular process as it stands right now is really quite awful. So that's a simple example of a pain point. The other one has to do with opportunity. If we could do this, if so-and-so could be more efficient as to what they're doing, we have an opportunity to do something or to get something out the door X times faster than we can currently do it. In other cases, an opportunity may represent an entire digital extension that is not even possible currently. Without this, we don't even have this part of a business. And that happens increasingly now as we're getting into Internet of Things, big data reporting, and so on. These are things that are largely not even possible with plain human interaction, or human interaction and staff, and therefore the opportunity is that this doesn't exist without this platform. And then lastly, and this is one of my favorite ones, and I find it funny that it's not used more widely. The last one we call the roadmap, and any software developer will be familiar with the term, but the roadmap is basically putting out all of those big, hairy, audacious goals to say, well, what's next? Like, what are these things that are going to come down the road once this is in place? If we launch this by date X, what happens afterwards? Do you have other brilliant ideas, other ways to extend this that maybe don't fit into the plan now because you're not ready for it, but you can see it coming? And remember, all of this is non-committal. The purpose of scope assessment worksheets is to look at what the plan should look like. And through looking at the plan and including the roadmap at the end, you're giving yourself the opportunity to fully document out essentially the dream. The things in the roadmap may not happen, but by documenting it, you're acknowledging to yourself and to your own team, we see this expanding to a certain size. We see this expanding to a certain capacity. We see new features being added as things grow and evolve. But at the same time, you're also sharing this with the entire planning and development mindset. By putting these ideas out there, you're also indicating to the developer world and to the project management world, all the architecture that comes into this. You're saying, well, we know that we might want this capability. It's a thought. That thought does influence how developers plan. You want the developers to think, what if this were multi-currency? We should plan for that. You may not use multi-currencies now, 6 months, or ever. But the fact that multi-currencies are a possibility, using this example, the developers now are thinking, when we are putting out our pricing and our payment gateways and however the mechanism works, we want to at least account for the fact that multi-currencies might happen. And that makes a big difference when you put this kind of roadmap in front of the developer world for planning. It gets them into a creative space, a creative and engineering space, where they're helping you even if you don't act on some of these things. And I cannot overemphasize how important this is. By putting this into, by bringing this entire scope assessment, including the roadmap, into your into alignment with your entire team, be it executive, all the way through to developer world, you are sharing the ideas of why we're doing this, all the way to what are the brilliant and amazing future things that you might do. And that both is going to be news for your executive and your developer world, because both of them are probably approaching this from a different perspective, at least at the beginning. And the purpose of scope assessment is to bring everyone in line to say, oh great, we now have a document that says here is a statement of things that we are thinking about doing. And once you're at that kind of alignment, you have taken an enormous step on how everyone is agreeing that they see this progressing, and therefore what is the budget for the first stage of all of this. Even acknowledging that there may be dozens of things that are on that roadmap or declined. There may be features that are great ideas, but they have no business value, and that's the point. So scope assessment worksheets can be a brilliantly quick way of starting the process to make sure that your team is aligned, and to make sure that down the road, as much as possible as this evolves, this is supposed to be a living, breathing document. So you want this to be the reference point constantly, so that when you keep coming back to the new additions, you want this to be evolving, but you also want it to be the central point of reference. So that everyone's saying, well, in the scope assessment worksheet, we talked about A and B and C. And from there, you can act on it. This is not a lockdown document. This is not saying you cannot come up with new ideas, not by any stretch. But it is more accurate, and it is more powerful as an alignment thought process than most people realize. And it is far more popular than saying nothing and potentially being greeted by surprises down the road because no one ever said anything. So give that some thought. When you have your next brilliant idea, think about a scope assessment worksheet process, and how it might help you and your team, be it startup, be it existing business, small SME enterprise, on how you can get your team aligned, especially if you have a bigger team that has different remote relationships, on how you are going to think of moving into that planning process to get budgets and to get scopes and then to get producing. If you have any questions, do feel free to reach out to me. I hope this has been helpful for everyone. Stay safe. Take care.